OMG Faves Nation, it's your guy Fave, and I've got a theory about this Chicago Bears defense that's going to make a lot of you rethink everything you've been mad about this entire offseason. Because what if I told you the Bears staying silent at edge rusher all summer long wasn't incompetence? What if it was actually a calculated gamble, one specific coach's bet on his own vision? And a bet that could either fix this defense's biggest problem or get multiple people fired right here in Chicago. Let's break down exactly what's going on, because once you hear the full picture, this entire situation is going to make a lot more sense, even if it's still genuinely nerve-wracking. Let's start with why Bears fans have every right to be frustrated in the first place, because the numbers here are brutal. Last season, this Bears defense recorded the second fewest total quarterback pressures in the entire NFL, just 214 on the year. Opposing quarterbacks were sitting back there like they were at a day spa. Even mid-tier starting quarterbacks were carving this defense up because there was almost no consistent pressure getting home. Fave's personal opinion, when your pass rush is that far behind the rest of the league, everything else on that side of the ball becomes exponentially harder. Your cornerbacks have to cover longer, your safeties get exposed over the top, your defense either wins with takeaways or it just gets torched, and that was basically the story of the Bears defense all last season. Feast or famine with almost no middle ground. So heading into this offseason, it felt like an absolute no-brainer that the Bears needed to make edge rusher a top priority. Montez Sweat needed a real running mate opposite him, somebody who could consistently win one-on-one matchups off the edge. Austin Booker missed half of last season with a knee injury, and while he flashed real ability late in the year, he's still an unproven, unfinished product. Dominique Robinson is gone from this roster entirely, and Shamar Turner, a name Bears fans were genuinely excited about, tore his ankle and is still working his way back. Every logical signal pointed toward Chicago being aggressive at this position in free agency, in the draft, through a trade, anything. And instead, silence. Nothing in free agency. No premium capital spent on the position in the draft. Fave's personal opinion, that stunned a lot of people, myself included, and it created a legitimate wave of frustration directed at general manager Ryan Poles. Ben Johnson even had to step in publicly and basically shift the pressure onto his own coaching staff, saying they simply needed to coach the position better instead of relying on adding more bodies. That's a real direct message, and it puts a massive spotlight on defensive coordinator Dennis Allen heading into this season. So here's where the actual explanation comes in, and once you hear it, this whole offseason starts to make a lot more sense, even if it's still risky as hell. According to reporting on this situation, defensive coordinator Dennis Allen has had a very specific plan for defensive end Dayo Odeyingbo ever since the Bears signed him to a significant free agent contract a couple off seasons ago. The idea was never to just plug Odeyingbo in as a straightforward edge rusher opposite Sweat. The plan was for him to play defensive end on running downs, using his size and length to set the edge and stop the run, and then kick inside to rush from the interior on passing downs, where that same combination of size and length becomes a real advantage against interior offensive linemen. Odeyingbo actually had legitimate success playing that exact type of role earlier in his career with the Indianapolis Colts, so this wasn't some random idea Allen pulled out of thin air. There was real logic behind building a hybrid front around a player with that specific skill set. The problem is that the entire plan fell apart before it ever really got a fair chance to work. Austin Booker's knee injury blew up the rotation Allen was counting on to complement Odeyingbo on the edge. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Odeyingbo himself suffered a torn Achilles, ending his season and casting real doubt over what kind of player he'd even be able to be once he returned. Fave's personal opinion, that is about as unlucky as it gets for a coordinator trying to install a brand new defensive scheme. You lose your two key pieces to that specific plan in the same season before either of them ever got to play significant snaps together in the roles you actually designed for them. And yet, according to someone close to the team, Dennis Allen still wants to run this exact strategy back in 2026. He still believes in Odeyingbo's potential to be that hybrid piece. That's why the Bears stood pat at edge rusher all offseason instead of chasing outside help, because in Allen's mind, the plan isn't broken. It just never got a real chance to prove itself. Now, here's where this gets genuinely concerning for a lot of Bears fans, myself included if I'm being completely honest. because you're basically telling me the Bears are doubling down on a rotation of Dayo Odeyingbo, who's coming off a torn Achilles and didn't perform particularly well even before that injury, alongside Austin Booker, who's still relatively unproven and coming off his own injury history, and Montez Sweat holding down the other side. That's the entire plan. No marquee free agent addition, no premium draft capital spent on the position, just a full, complete commitment to the vision Dennis Allen had from the very beginning, finally getting the chance to actually be tested with a healthy roster. Ben Johnson has been crystal clear about accountability heading into this season too, and this isn't just talk. Go back to when Johnson first walked into Hollis Hall. He made it clear to everybody in that building, coaches included, that the locker room and the culture come first. And that message is exactly how he flipped this franchise's identity in year one. But that same accountability cuts both ways now. Last year's coaching staff largely avoided real consequences because it was everybody's first year adjusting to a new system. This year, Fave's personal opinion, there is no more grace period. Everyone in that building, players and coaches alike, is going to be held to a real standard. So let's talk about what's actually at stake for Dennis Allen specifically, because this is where the gamble gets real. I don't personally think Allen is going to get fired outright if this specific plan doesn't work out this season. He's a well-respected defensive mind, and I think he'll likely get another opportunity to figure things out even if year two doesn't go the way he's hoping. But that doesn't mean there's no pressure on him. If Odeyingbo doesn't produce, if Grady Jarrett continues to underwhelm after a rough first season in Chicago, guys that Allen specifically pushed for and believed fit his defensive system, then Allen is going to find himself squarely on the hot seat heading into next offseason. And here's a detail that makes this whole situation even more fascinating from a roster construction standpoint. The Bears structured several of these defensive contracts in a way that gives them real financial flexibility if this gamble doesn't pay off. According to reporting, Chicago could save around $15 million in cap space by moving on from Odeyingbo after this season. They could save another $13.5 million by moving on from Grady Jarrett. And if, in some scenario nobody's really expecting, the Bears ever wanted to move on from Montez Sweat, that would free up $21 million more. Fave's personal opinion, that's not an accident. Those contracts were built with real exit ramps in mind, which tells you the front office knew this defensive front carried real risk even as they were putting the pieces together. So why does all of this pressure fall so heavily on Dennis Allen specifically? Because half of this defense's projected starters heading into this season were players Allen himself pushed to acquire during his time running this unit. Odeyingbo, Jarrett, the entire vision for how this front seven is supposed to function, that's Allen's fingerprint all over it. If this defense doesn't take a real tangible step forward this season, especially the pass rush specifically, the Bears front office is going to have some very difficult conversations to have about the direction of that side of the ball heading into 2027. And if it does flop, Fave's personal opinion, I don't think you're necessarily looking at Dennis Allen packing his bags immediately. I think you're more likely looking at changes lower down the coaching totem pole first, maybe the defensive line coach, maybe other position-specific assistants before ownership in the front office make any kind of dramatic move at coordinator. But make no mistake, if this gamble blows up in year two the same way things fell apart in year one, Allen's seat gets a whole lot hotter. And multiple jobs across that defensive staff could genuinely be in jeopardy. Here's my honest final take on this whole situation. Faves Nation. The silence at edge rusher this offseason wasn't laziness, and it wasn't some kind of oversight by Ryan Poles. It was a calculated risk by Dennis Allen, a bet on a specific player finally getting healthy and a specific defensive vision finally getting the chance to actually be tested the way it was originally designed. We genuinely do not know yet whether this works. A healthy Dayo Odeyingbo playing exactly the hybrid role Allen envisioned, paired with a healthy Austin Booker finally getting a real runway to build on his strong finish to last season, that combination has real legitimate upside if both guys stay on the field. But we also have to be honest that this comes with genuine risk attached, given both players' recent injury history and given how underwhelming this pass rush looked across the board last year. Fave's personal opinion, you at least have to give this plan a fair shot to see if it can actually work before writing it off completely. This offense with Caleb Williams and this improved offensive line has already shown it can compete with the best teams in this league. The real question left standing is whether this defense, and specifically Dennis Allen's calculated gamble at the edge rusher position, can finally match that level heading into this season. If it doesn't, Favs Nation, you could be looking at a completely different looking defensive front and possibly a completely different looking defensive coaching staff by the time we get to 2027. Now I want to hear from all of you. Are you tired of watching opposing quarterbacks carve up this Bears defense play after play? Smash that like button if you agree with that. And drop it in the comments. Do you actually trust Dennis Allen's plan with a healthy Dayo Odeyingbo and a healthy Austin Booker? Or is this entire gamble going to blow up in his face by December? Let me know exactly where you stand down below. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we bring you real, honest Chicago Bears breakdowns like this one all the time. Tag a fellow Bears fan who needs to see this whole situation broken down, and I will see you in the next one. This has been Fave, signing off. Faves out.